In the picturesque town of Whitbridge, nestled between the rolling hills of Devon, a modest terraced house stood at the edge of a quiet street. Inside lived the Murray family. To outsiders, they seemed close-knit, the kind of family that hosted Sunday roasts and sent holiday cards in perfect cursive. But for Ethan Murray, the youngest of three, the warmth of family was just a distant concept. Ethan was always the shadow behind his siblings, Charlotte and Oliver. Charlotte, with her sharp tongue and Oxford degree, was the golden girl. Oliver, athletic and charming, was the apple of their father's eye. Ethan? He was the quiet one, the awkward boy with smudged glasses and ink-stained fingers, always sketching in his battered notebook. At family dinners, he barely spoke. When he did, his words were brushed aside like crumbs on a tablecloth. He tried to share his art once, showed his parents a comic he'd spent months perfecting. His father looked at it for 2 seconds before scoffing. "You think this'll pay the bills? Grow up, Ethan." Ethan shrank into himself that day. His mother didn't defend him. Charlotte rolled her eyes. Oliver laughed. From that moment, Ethan knew. In their eyes, he was a disappointment. So he worked in silence. While they celebrated birthdays and job promotions, he honed his craft. He spent hours in libraries, learning design software on outdated computers. He took odd jobs to afford a drawing tablet. He built an online portfolio by candlelight in his cold attic room. No one in Whitbridge knew that the boy they ignored was laying the groundwork for something greater. Then came the day he turned 18. On that cold morning, Ethan found an envelope on the kitchen table. No gift, no card. Just a note from his father. "You're a man now. Time to stand on your own." He was being pushed out. No farewell hugs. Just silence and a locked front door behind him. As Ethan walked away from the house, the mist of Whitbridge clinging to his coat, he didn't cry. He didn't beg to stay. He simply clutched his sketchbook tighter and whispered to himself, "They'll remember me one day." He had no idea just how soon that day would come. 3 years had passed since Ethan left the Murray house, and not once did he return. The streets of Whitbridge had long forgotten the quiet boy with the sketchbook. But far away in London, a name was beginning to rise in the design world: E.M. Rowan. His artwork was bold, emotional, and unlike anything seen in mainstream galleries. He worked anonymously, pouring years of rejection, pain, and resilience into every piece he submitted. No one knew that E.M. Rowan was really Ethan Murray, the invisible boy from Devon. Ethan lived in a cramped studio above a bakery in East London. The walls were covered in concept art, magazine clippings, and sticky notes with scribbled deadlines. He survived on toast and tea, but he was alive. More alive than he'd ever felt in Whitbridge. One rainy Thursday afternoon, his inbox pinged with a subject line that made him drop his teacup. Collab proposal from Helix Creative. Urgent. Helix was one of the largest media agencies in Europe. They had worked on campaigns for fashion houses, music labels, even tech giants. Ethan's hands trembled as he clicked open the email. They wanted him. Not just for a design. For a lead role in their upcoming international campaign. "We're captivated by your work, Mr. Rowan," the message read. "We believe your vision aligns perfectly with our campaign for the Nova Tech launch. We're prepared to fly you in for a meeting this week." Ethan stared at the screen, blinking. Nova Tech. That was one of the biggest product reveals of the year. Millions in budget. Global exposure. And they wanted him? That night, he stood on his rooftop, letting the rain soak through his hoodie. He looked out over the glowing skyline of London, heart pounding. This was it. The moment he had dreamed of when he had nothing but a sketchpad and a whisper of hope. He replied to the email with a single line. "I accept." When and where? Within days, Ethan found himself in a high-rise meeting room overlooking the Thames. Executives shook his hand, praising his portfolio. The Novatech director, a sharp-eyed woman named Amira Chen, was particularly taken by Ethan's storytelling. "I want your soul in the design," she said. "Don't water it down. Make it personal." And Ethan did. He spent sleepless nights crafting visuals that weren't just beautiful. They meant something. They spoke of struggle, of identity, of quiet revenge. When the final pitch was unveiled to Novatech's board, silence filled the room. Then applause. Standing ovations. Weeks later, his campaign went viral. His name, M. Rowan, trended across platforms. Publications rushed to interview him. Clients flooded his inbox. Offers came from Paris, Tokyo, New York. But Ethan wasn't finished yet. His eyes weren't on fame or fortune. He was watching Whitbridge. And Whitbridge was about to come knocking. The town of Whitbridge hadn't changed much. The same gray-bricked shops lined the cobbled streets. The same gossips filled the cafes. But beneath the calm surface, trouble was brewing, especially for the Murrays. Their construction company, Murray & Sons Developments, had once been the pride of Devon. Known for rapid builds and cheap solutions, they dominated the local housing market for years. But shortcuts don't stay hidden forever. Over time, buildings began to crack. Clients filed complaints. Legal threats loomed. To make things worse, a new competitor entered the scene. Bridgestone Innovations, a sleek, design-led firm making waves across the UK. They offered smart, sustainable housing with visual flair, and they were backed by one of the biggest design agencies in London. One morning, Darren Murray sat in his office, face pale, fingers trembling around a half-empty mug of cold coffee. He stared at a letter stamped with Bridgestone's gold insignia. It was official. They had won the development bid for the town's new eco-estate, a project that Murray & Sons had been counting on to survive. Across the room, his father, Malcolm Murray, paced angrily. His once booming voice now sounded strained and tired. "They're ruining us," Malcolm growled. This Bridgestone firm came out of nowhere. And their pitch? Too perfect. They must have someone powerful backing them. Darren nodded grimly. Their visuals. I recognized the style. The mood. The details. It reminded me of Ethan. Silence fell. Malcolm's face hardened. Don't be ridiculous. Ethan doesn't have the guts for this. He was always weak, always soft. But doubt had taken root. Darren remembered Ethan's sketchbooks, his late nights drawing, the way he would pause and adjust shading with almost obsessive precision. What if? That same afternoon, Bridgestone Innovations released a press statement introducing their lead creative for the Whitbridge project, E.M. Rowan. Darren nearly dropped his phone. There, in sleek black text under the company logo, was a name he had tried to forget. E.M. Rowan. Ethan Murray. He was back. And he wasn't hiding anymore. The news traveled through town like wildfire. The boy they had pitied. The boy they had mocked. The boy who had been discarded by his own family was now leading the company that had just crushed theirs. Neighbors whispered. Old schoolmates tweeted. And the Murrays, once untouchable, now faced stares of pity instead of envy. Inside the Murray household, panic erupted. Legal papers scattered the dining table. Bank statements grew redder. Projects stalled. Investors pulled out. In the chaos, Darren opened Ethan's LinkedIn profile. It was polished, professional, and cold. His banner photo read, "Design isn't just about buildings. It's about remembering who said you couldn't." Darren swallowed hard. Malcolm still refused to believe it. "He's just lucky," he barked. "Some designer put his name on the thing. It's branding, nothing more." But deep down, even he could feel it, the empire was crumbling. And the boy they rejected was holding the hammer. Ethan stood in the gleaming conference room of Bridgestone's regional office in Exeter, facing a curved table of investors, architects, and town officials. His presentation had just ended. Flawless, confident, calm. Years of silence, of shadowing others, had built him for this very moment. The room erupted in polite applause, but Ethan's eyes drifted past the approval, landing on one face at the back. Darren. He hadn't expected his brother to show up. Dressed in a wrinkled suit, Darren looked nothing like the golden boy of the past. His tie was crooked, eyes sunken, pride dimmed. Ethan kept his expression steady. He wasn't here for revenge. Not publicly. After the meeting, as the crowd dispersed, Darren approached him cautiously. "Ethan," he muttered. Ethan took a breath. "I go by Rowan now." An awkward silence stretched between them before Darren spoke again, this time quieter. "I didn't know you were behind all this." Ethan's lips curved in a polite smile. "I wasn't hiding. You just weren't looking." Darren's face tightened. "Listen. Dad's not doing well. Business is in trouble. Clients are leaving. Investors are nervous. Ethan arched a brow. That tends to happen when you cut corners and build on lies. The jab landed. Darren ran a hand through his hair. Look, we need help. Maybe you could speak to your board. Get them to subcontract a portion of the build to us. A small one. Anything. We just need something to stay afloat. Ethan looked at him. Really looked. The desperation was raw. But so was the memory of cold nights, of being ignored at dinner tables, of packing his bags alone with no one to say goodbye. You want me to help the people who left me with nothing? He asked, voice low and calm. I was wrong, Darren said. We were all wrong. Ethan tilted his head. And you came all this way to say that? No, Darren admitted. I came because I don't know where else to turn. Silence fell again. Ethan turned to the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the city move below. A decade ago, he'd have done anything to be welcomed back. Now the power dynamic had flipped, and he wasn't sure he wanted the old seat at the table anymore. But then he remembered the workers. The families who relied on Murray and Sons. People who had nothing to do with the past. I'll think about it, Ethan finally said. But I won't save a sinking ship just so you can steer it back into the same rocks. As Darren walked away, his shoulders slumped but his steps slow, Ethan felt no triumph. Only clarity. This wasn't revenge. This was redefinition. And he had the pen now. The boardroom at Bridgestone's Exeter branch buzzed with cautious curiosity. Ethan, now Rowan to them all, stood before the company's decision-makers, the city's most sought-after contractors, and 3 senior representatives from the planning committee. He had called the meeting on short notice. As murmurs settled, Rowan adjusted his cufflinks, stepped forward, and clicked his presentation remote. The first slide displayed, Proposed Collaboration, Strategic Local Inclusion. One of the executives leaned in. Rowan, what's this about? Rowan's tone was even. I'm proposing a partnership. Temporary. Limited. With Murray and Sons Construction. A gasp escaped one of the younger associates. The name still carried weight. Even in disgrace. Rowan continued. Despite their recent failings, Murray and Sons possesses a skilled workforce. If managed properly, they could assist on the East Wing development. Labor, not leadership. A heavy silence filled the room. An older board member cleared his throat. Is this a personal decision? Rowan didn't flinch. It's strategic. We stay on budget. We prevent layoffs for dozens of families. And, he paused, his eyes sharper now, we retain full oversight. There was murmured discussion. A few skeptical glances. But no one could deny Rowan's reputation for delivering under pressure. Finally, the chairwoman nodded. Proceed. But your name is tied to this. If they falter, it's on you. Rowan accepted with a nod. Inside, his stomach twisted. He knew this was a gamble. But it wasn't about saving Darren. It was about giving the workers a chance, and proving that leadership wasn't about ego, but impact. Later that evening, Darren sat across from Rowan at a pub near the Cathedral Square, stunned. You actually convinced them? He stammered. Rowan sipped his ginger ale. Not convinced. Negotiated. Big difference. Darren looked down, ashamed. I don't know what to say. Say less, Rowan said, coolly. Focus on not screwing this up. I vouched for the team. Not for you. Darren nodded slowly. I get that. And thanks. For real. Rowan gave a small shrug, though something inside him cracked. Not from weakness, but release. It was the first time Darren had ever said, thank you. And Rowan wasn't sure whether to feel victorious, or just tired. Outside, the cathedral bells chimed the hour. A symbol of time past. Of things shifting. Rowan wasn't looking for reconciliation. He was building something better. Rowan stood at the edge of the East Wing construction site, clipboard in hand, wind teasing the hem of his coat. It was early morning, and frost still clung to the scaffolding like a warning. The site was buzzing with life. Workers shouted over engines. Steel clanged. Sparks danced from welding tools. He'd brought in strict oversight, daily reports, layered supervision, and an off-site logistics team. The risk of working with Murray and Sons wasn't lost on him. Still, progress was undeniable. Until it wasn't. A week into the new phase, a discrepancy appeared in the supply logs, 20 pallets of insulation missing. Rowan's head snapped up as soon as he read the report. Theft? Mismanagement? Or something worse? He called an emergency inspection. Within hours, evidence mounted, purchase receipts were forged, delivery records manipulated. And worst of all, the culprit was someone under Darren's supervision. When Rowan confronted Darren that afternoon in the temporary site office, the air was thick with tension. "You promised me control," Rowan said, voice low. "And you had it," Darren snapped. "I didn't forge anything." "But you didn't prevent it either," Rowan replied, eyes like ice. "Your oversight failed." Darren's face twisted in frustration. "I've been trying." "You think it's easy to rebuild from nothing?" Rowan slammed the folder shut. "It's not about easy. It's about accountability." Silence. Then Rowan leaned forward, calmer now. "You have two options. Take responsibility and fix this. Or I pull the plug." "On everything." Darren's jaw tightened. "And my men?" "They can stay. I'll absorb them into Bridgestone teams. But your name's off the site." That night, Darren didn't sleep. Instead, he drove for hours through the dark countryside, looping between towns. Memories haunted him. His father laughing at Ethan's art, his own smug comments, the day he threw Ethan out. Now Ethan, Rowan, had the power to bury or resurrect his name. At dawn, Darren returned and walked straight into Rowan's office. "I'll fix it," he said, his voice rough. "You have my word." Rowan stared at him a long moment. "You'll fix it under supervision." "Fair." As Darren turned to leave, Rowan added quietly, "If only you'd taken this seriously 10 years ago." Darren paused, shoulders tense, then nodded once. He didn't ask for forgiveness. And Rowan didn't offer it. The foundation was cracked, but not beyond repair. The grand opening of the East Wing was just 3 weeks away. Marble floors gleamed beneath the chandeliers. Glass walls stretched toward the horizon, reflecting the sunrise like a promise. Rowan stood in the main atrium, silent, as teams rushed around him to finish final details. Bridgestone's flagship was nearly complete. But Rowan didn't feel triumph. He felt the weight of what this place represented. Years of being dismissed, mocked, unseen. His father's voice still echoed in memory. "Leadership isn't for the soft." Darren's laughter. Mum's silence. He walked into the gallery hall, his own personal space, designed in secret. At the far end, covered in silk cloth, stood a sculpture. He'd carved it himself, long before Bridgestone even existed. It was a twisted tree, bare branches, roots exposed, standing alone on a stone pedestal. A symbol of his past. That night, as he locked the gallery, he saw a figure standing in the rain. It was his mother. "May I come in?" she asked, voice unsure. He hesitated, then opened the door. They stood inside the quiet gallery, surrounded by his art. She walked slowly, pausing before the tree sculpture. "You made this?" "Yes. Years ago." She traced the edge of the root with her fingers. "It looks broken. But strong." Rowan didn't reply. She turned to him, eyes wet. "I came to say something I should have said a long time ago." "I'm sorry." He stayed silent. "I let your father decide too many things. I thought if I didn't oppose him, the family would stay together. But I lost you in the process." Her hands trembled. Rowan looked at her, truly looked. She was older now. Smaller than he remembered. Her hands bore time's weight. But her voice, though shaky, carried truth. "I don't need anything from you, Ethan. Just, maybe one day, you'll let me be part of your life again." She turned to leave. But Rowan spoke. "You never called me Ethan after I left." She froze. "I changed it to Rowan to survive. But, hearing you say it like that," he trailed off. She turned back, hope flickering. He gave a faint nod. "You can come to the opening." Her eyes widened. "Really?" He nodded again, softer this time. "Just, don't expect it to fix everything." "I don't." And with that, she left, quiet, but not rejected. Rowan remained in the gallery, standing beside the tree. The rain continued outside, tapping the glass. Echoes of the past still lingered, but now they had somewhere to land. The East Wing opening night arrived, blanketed in soft gold lights and the hum of distant classical music. Guests in formal wear spilled into the marble atrium, their heels clicking on polished floors, their laughter echoing under the high-arched ceiling. Rowan stood by the glass railing above, observing. He wore a deep navy suit, understated but tailored perfectly. On his lapel, a silver pin in the shape of the Bridgestone tree. His symbol, his legacy. He wasn't nervous. He was ready. Below, dignitaries, investors, artists, and even his old university professors moved through the hallways. Press flashes went off. A curated tour of the gallery began. At the center, the sculpture, the twisted tree, stood unveiled and illuminated. And then he saw them. His father. Darren. They entered awkwardly, both in borrowed tuxedos. Their eyes darted around, unsure where to stand, how to blend in. They didn't belong. And they knew it. His mother entered minutes later, dressed modestly but with pride in her posture. She gave him a small nod from the floor below. He returned it. Later that evening, in the private dining hall for key sponsors and board members, a long mahogany table was set. Name cards marked every seat. At the head, Rowan Bridgestone. He took his place. As the courses were served, whispers floated around him. The Minister of Culture complimented his gallery. A VC from Oxford offered a collaboration. The CEO of an international firm asked to meet next week. Then, as the final toast was raised, a late hand went up. It was his father. Awkward. Unwelcome. "I'd like to say something," the man said. The room fell quiet. Rowan didn't nod, but didn't stop him either. His father stood. Cleared his throat. "I never imagined I'd be sitting at my own son's table, asking for his time. But here I am. I made mistakes. I thought success came in only one shape. I was wrong." Silence. "I don't deserve forgiveness. But I hope at least that you see. You built something that none of us ever could. And I'm proud. I truly am." He sat down. Darren stared at his plate, silent. Rowan slowly stood. "I built Bridgestone," he said, voice calm. "But I didn't do it to prove anything to you. I did it because I needed to survive. To thrive. I built it so that people like me, people dismissed, underestimated, could have a space to grow." He let that sink in. "I appreciate your words. But understand this. Forgiveness takes time. Respect is earned. Tonight, you are my guests. Nothing more. Nothing less." He sat down. There was no applause. Just stillness. Later, as the guests left and the hall emptied, Rowan stood alone again in the atrium. The tree sculpture glowed behind him. He looked ahead. The future was vast, uncertain, and fully his.